Hey guys, it's Olivia here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and this is Black History Month in the US, so I thought there is no better time for me to share my favourite books with Black characters by Black authors. This list is doubling up. It can be seen as a recommendation list for Blackathon or just for reading more Black books, because why would you not? And it is also part of a series which is happening on a blog to do with Black History Month and celebrating Blackness. On this list, I have some young adult for you, I've got some middle grade for you, I've got some adult fiction for you, I've got some non-fiction, I've got some poetry, I've got some classics, I've got some novels in verse. Girl, I've got everything. And I hope that you'll find something that you can enjoy and read on this list. So first of all, I have to mention Noughts and Crosses by Malorie Blackman, which is a personal book to me because it is the first time that I remember as a teenager reading a book with a Black main character and seeing myself reflected in the books that I was reading. So Noughts and Crosses is this flipped society where the Black people are the oppressors and the white people are the oppressed, and these two characters, Callum and Sephi, fall in love. Callum is white and therefore he is a Nought, I believe, and then Sephi is Black and she's a Cross. She is also the daughter of a politician, so she's really in the view of the public, and they kind of have this forbidden romance going on. And guys, a lot of stuff goes down in this book. The ending of this book is gonna mess you up, and it is absolutely amazing. I felt like it did a very good job of discussing racism and oppression and strategic oppression in this flipped, not quite our world society. And I really loved what Malorie Blackman did with this series. I want to recommend Becoming by Michelle Obama. I had to do it. It was one of my favourite books of 2019 and it is a great audiobook to listen to. Michelle Obama talks about her journey from when she was a child to how she becomes First Lady and her experiences as a First Lady. And because she's not just talking about her political First Lady time and spanning across her entire childhood and growing up, you get to see a lot of the experiences that she faces as a Black woman and how people regard her and how she regards them and the things she's taught and how she lives her life. She also talks a lot about being a mother and kind of balancing that with the political world. I really enjoy this non-fiction novel and I highly recommend you read it even if you aren't interested in the presidency, because I wasn't, and yet I loved this. I have to mention Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. What would this list be without it? It's one of my favourite Black fantasies that I've ever read. We follow our main character who lives in a world without magic. There used to be magic and the Black people were the ones who had it. However, this king came in, oppressed all of the Black people and then decided to erase magic completely. However, there is a chance that magic can come back, and it's up to our main character to fulfill all the requirements in order for that to happen, because if the Black people had magic, the tables in the suppression game would turn. We also follow some other side characters who kind of have large roles in this fantasy, and I thought it was a lot of fun, but at the same time it talked a lot about racism, oppression, and the anger that can be involved with that, and how anger can be used, and how anger can make you maybe a bit too impulsive, so it hinders what you're trying to do in the long run. I thought it was really good. I know some people find this overhyped, but it is what it is. Then I want to talk about Some Places More Than Others by Renee Watson, and this is a middle grade book that I read last year, and if I read this when I was a child, I would have been so happy. So this one follows our main character who lives with her mum and dad, and her mum is pregnant, so she's got another sibling on the way. Her dad is going to make the trip to New York that he usually does, and he never really goes and sees his dad when he goes on that trip because there is some unspoken tension between them, and the main character finds out that this tension started and originated when she was born, and she's worried that she had something to do with it. So she asks her dad to go to New York with him, and when they go there, she starts prompting him to see his dad, which is her grandfather, and that complex family relationship gets unraveled. And while she's in New York, she's also working on a project to do with family, and she's discovering a lot about Black history and her roots and her culture. And I really enjoyed that, and seeing Black culture celebrated in such a way, especially Black history too. So it's the perfect read for this month if you're considering it. After that, I have to mention The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I feel like most people know about this one. We follow Star, who is in the car when her best friend is killed by the police, And this one talks about protest, it talks about police brutality, it talks about racism and how racism can manifest in the modern day in teenage everyday life as well. And I felt like it did a very, very good job of talking about police brutality in America, as well as being in a biracial relationship, as well as the complexities and the difficulties that Black families face in different neighborhoods, in different places. And I totally agreed with everything Angie Thomas was saying in this book. She goes into so much detail. I could analyze this book for ages and still not reach the bottom of all the things she has put into it. Then I need to talk about The Colour Purple by Alice Walker, which didn't quite make my best books of 2019 list, but if you looked at my end of the year blog post about favourites that were favourites but couldn't make it onto my list because of limited space, you would hear about The Colour Purple. So The Colour Purple is a novel told entirely in letter forms, and it's got a bit of a classical style to it. It's written in the way that the main character speaks, so do be ready for some of that complexity of the English dialect. And it follows this girl who is sexually abused at a young age. Her children are taken away from her, and then she kind of is married off to this man who treats her terribly. And it's about her finding her own sexuality, it's about her finding her own strength, and it's basically just about living her life in this racist American history place and overcoming all of the racism and Black struggle that she has to experience, also Black female struggle especially. And there's also quite a bit of something to do with her sister and her sister's travel trip that she takes. I felt like this did a very good job of showing Black femininity and also a Black LGBT plus story. And this book was quite emotional and it was quite sad at times, but at the same time it was really empowering. And by the end of it, I had a smile on my face. Bittersweet smile, but still a smile. Next up, we have Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I have a full review for this on my blog where I talk about my complex feelings towards this novel, because although I did appreciate all of the themes and the setting and what it discussed, I didn't actually like the narrative and storyline and some of the characters. But that aside, I still recommend this book to everyone because it is such an important book. So in this one, we follow Ife. Ife is this girl from Nigeria who immigrates to the United States, and what she expects when she gets there and what she does get when she gets there, but it's also following this man, I think also from Lagos, who immigrates to the United Kingdom in hopes of getting to the United States after that, and also his own experiences and his own journey. It is a romantic story. It doesn't just follow two main characters who fall in love. There's other relationships along the way. And throughout all of this, there's underlying racism, racial struggle. There are blog posts in this book which talk about some of her experiences as a Black female in America and when she goes back home to Lagos. And I feel like these blog posts really made this book because it opened up the floor for a lot of discussion and a lot of thinking and processing that the main character does, but also we need to do as a people collectively. Then I want to talk about Pride by Ibi Zoboi, and this is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but Black. We've seen a lot of Pride and Prejudice retellings, but if you give me any retelling but make it Black, I am there, sis. I am there to read it. Pride is actually my favourite Pride and Prejudice story, even better than the original, because in all the Pride and Prejudice retellings that I've read so far, and in Pride and Prejudice itself, I don't understand Mr. Darcy's character, and I don't understand his character trajectory and what happens in the middle. Like, I didn't understand that switch up of the game, but in Pride, I completely get it, and I completely get where the book is going. We follow Zuri, who lives in this neighbourhood that is getting gentrified, and more people have to move out because they cannot afford living there. And then opposite her house, this richer family move in and they kind of jazz up the house and basically gentrify it. And they are a Black family and they have these two sons, and she starts to feel interest in one of them. At first she kind of hates him, but we all know the story of Pride and Prejudice, okay? But I feel like he did a very good job of showing the character development that I wish Pride and Prejudice had made more explicit and eased into a bit more, so it made more sense. And I really liked how it talked about gentrification, how it talked about loving Black culture and loving the Black neighborhood. We get some Latinx foods in there, and it's also a big family, and I love a big family. It's quite a quick read, and I also enjoyed how much Zuri wants to get to college or university, and her talking about being a first generation person to go to university. I would love to see more first generation uni stories because that is a big story to face. Next, we need to talk about The Crossover by Kwame Alexander, and I read this one a couple of years ago. Haven't talked about it much on my channel, but I really enjoyed it. And this is a novel in verse to do with basketball, and I think it follows this teenager who's really into basketball, and his dad is a basketball coach or used to play basketball, and it's just really fun. I don't know how many of you guys know this, but I used to play basketball. If you're like a child into basketball, or you're a young adult and you want to read a nice basketball narrative, I would definitely recommend this one. And as well as that, basketball is kind of ingrained into Black culture in a way that, I don't know, it just kind of is. So it's nice to see it in a book. Then we should talk about Let's Talk About Love by Kann, and this is not the best book ever, but it's really cute and it's really fluffy and it's really entertaining. So this one follows a main character, and she is asexual, and she's kind of just out of a bad relationship where her partner didn't understand her asexuality and that broke up with her basically due to her being an asexual. So she kind of has to navigate past this breakup, come to terms with accepting herself as an asexual all over again, and also she's being pressured by her parents to follow this particular career path when she's not into that at all. She's into interior design. Along the way, she meets this cute guy, but she doesn't know how to come out to him, and it's basically just following that. And I think this was the first book I read with an asexual main character, so it was kind of a mind opener one to me about a different experience, and I will always appreciate seeing Black characters in LGBT+ books because we don't see that enough yet. We still need more of it. Then I want to talk about Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, which is a book that I read in January and I've recently talked about, but I'm going to talk about it again because it was a jolly good book. So Binti is a science fiction novel, and it's set on this planet. There's this girl and she gets accepted into a prestigious university. Nobody in her culture or from her home understands why she wants to go, so she decides to run away and leave behind everything she's ever known to go on a spaceship that's going to take her to the university to study. However, when she's on the spaceship and along the way, tragedy strikes when the spaceship is attacked by these aliens who kill everyone except her, and they are attacking this spaceship for a particular reason to do with the university that they're going to, and Binti kind of needs to discuss with them and negotiate. This book did a very good job of showing indigenous/tribal kind of Black cultures, especially where Binti is from. She also values hair a lot, and she values these oils and practices that she does, and it was refreshing and nice to see that side of Black culture shown. I also thought it was a very good colonialist or post-colonialist book, which has to do with moving past colonialism, moving past some of the mistakes that people have made in the past and trying to make reparations or reconcile different cultures. And I appreciated seeing that happen in a story that was quick, easy and readable if you want to squeeze it in this month. Then I'm also going to mention my favourite read from January again, and that was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This one is a science fiction novel about Dana, and she is a modern woman living in the modern present day. She does have a white husband, and she gets dragged back into the slavery time in America every time this little white boy called Rufus is in danger or needs her help. But being in slavery time America while a Black woman is of course very dangerous for her, so she's trying to figure out how to survive in that time while also trying to figure out how to return home. She kind of ends up going back and forth quite a bit, and maybe she brings a person with her every now and again. This one did a very good job of handling the slave narrative, of making it a reality to us as modern day people, because the main character is a modern day woman getting dragged back into those times, and you see her struggling with this displacement and this reconciliation of these two realities into this one reality that she has to experience time and time again. It did a very good job of showing how racism and slavery, racism in the modern day and slavery in the past, was both physical abuse but also strategic and mental abuse, and still can be today. I love seeing those comparisons drawn, and then you also get to see how a biracial relationship, whether it's a love relationship or a sexual relationship, is approached differently in the past and also in the present day. It was pure genius. The writing is amazing, and there's so much more in this book to unpack. I don't have time to tell you all about it here because I'm talking about 20 odd books, but read this one and find out. Lots of trigger warnings for all the books I discuss in the comment section down below to the best of my memory, because I did read some of these a while ago. Next, we have a poetry collection, and that is for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough by Ntozake Shange, and this is one of my favorite poetry collections that there is. However, it consists of one poem, one very long choreo poem. A choreo poem is a poem that involves music, dance, and movement, as well as speech, and it kind of almost reads like a play, but it is poetry. And these ladies, black ladies, are talking about their black struggle as women who are living in America, trying to earn their keep, trying to have a job, trying to find a steady man, the racism that they face, and it was just really powerful and really emotional. Ntozake Shange's writing is absolutely beautiful, and she made up the form of choreo poem herself when she wrote this collection, so that's just pure genius. If my writing reaches this level ever in my life, I know that I'll have made it. Another poetry collection I really have to recommend to you is The Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde, and this is by far one of my favourite poetry collections. Audre Lorde has just got such a way with words and such a way with rhythm, and you can really see that come out in her poetry. Some of them are about the black struggle, some of them are about black beauty and what it's like to be unique and appreciate the blackness that you have within you, and I really just loved these poems. A third poetry collection that I'm going to mention here are There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce by Morgan Parker, and as a Beyonce fan, I just had to read this because of that title. But don't worry, it's not calling or dragging down Beyonce, it's actually saying that Beyonce is beautiful, but what is more beautiful than Beyonce is blackness and a celebration of our own culture, and that's what these poems are. It's a modern day poetry collection, so you get some unique formatting of poetry, but I really appreciated seeing that, and I felt like some of the poems really worked well in that format. It was a nice celebration of black culture, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a black woman, and how we are beautiful. Then I'm going to recommend a very short non-fiction essay called A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. A Small Place is about her experiences growing up in Antigua and seeing the devastation that colonialism has caused to the island, but also how post-colonialism has affected it and how they've left the island and the state that they've left it in, and how it's terrible how they've left the country after using it for so long as a colony. And I feel like it did a good job of discussing post-colonialism and some of the problems with post-colonialism, and why these colonies that have left the countries still need to support them and help them out, because there is so much progress and building up that needs to be done still. It was a very well written essay, very good points argued very constructively and clearly. Then I want to recommend The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this is a novel in verse. It's about this black girl who lives somewhere within Latin America. I can't exactly remember where, but it is about her struggle where she is wanting to do things differently than the way they are done in her house. The religion is very traditional, and she falls in love with poetry and finds that's a very good way for her to express herself and express her feelings. She wants to speak at this poetry open mic, I believe, and her brother also has a secret, and it's just really about this family and these two teenagers trying to reconcile how they feel with how they have to live their lives at home versus how they can live it outside of their home. And it was a really good story. I read it directly after reading The Raven Cycle, so I desperately need a reread because Raven Cycle kind of overshadowed everything at that time period. But yeah, I've heard it's a really good audiobook and I recommend it. Then I want to talk about Letters from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King, and I don't just mean the essay Letters by Birmingham Jail, but I mean this Little Green Classics Penguin edition, because as well as having the letter from Birmingham Jail in it, it also has a little sermon that Martin Luther King has written, and that is one of the best little non-fiction pieces that I've ever read, and I would recommend it to everyone, even though it's religious. So first, let me talk about the letter from Birmingham Jail, which is a very clear and concise response to this critical analysis written of Martin Luther King and his ways of protesting racism and segregation. And his response was so controlled, was so detailed and carefully written, and he just put those people to shame, and he managed to hone his anger, hone his emotions to this grand movement that he's feeling and put it in a response to a letter. And I will always admire that control of emotion that he shows, but also how smart that man is, because he's writing this from jail, yo. He's at the lowest of the low and he's still fighting. Respect. But then we have to talk about the sermon, and in that sermon he talks about kindness and how everyone in the world is connected to everyone. So how is it that some people don't want the best for everyone? Like, how is it that we can let some people be downtrodden and underdogs and not support them when our lives are all connected? And it was so powerful and so beautiful. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I'm going to talk about The Lonely Londoners by Sam Selvin next, which is a book I read in my first year of uni, and it really personally affected me because it has to do with my own history. It follows these men from the Caribbean who immigrate to London, and it's not just people who immigrate from Jamaica, because not all immigrants in London from the Caribbean are Jamaican. That seems to be some misconception, but no, there's also some from other islands too, and it's all about them kind of trying to settle in London, trying to settle in their new lives, because they were promised that when they go to the motherland, they're going to have riches, life is going to be easier. But quite like the American dream, the United Kingdom dream is a different story. And when they get there, they're suffering in underpaid jobs, they're suffering from racism, and they're all of these men who have left their family behind and their lives behind to start over. And in a similar way, both sets of my grandparents came from Jamaica to the United Kingdom around the time period that this is set in. So it was really emotional for me to read this one and see maybe some of the things that they had to face, that they had to deal with, that they had to adapt to. And I just felt like it was a brilliant novel. It's also written in Creole, so just a heads up that the writing is in the style that they speak, but it was really well done. And last but not least, I'm going to mention American Fairytale, but really the whole American Dreamer series by Adriana Herrera. So I did talk to her on Twitter about whether she identifies as Black or not, and she says first and foremost she identifies as Latinx, but she could also identify as Black. So I just want to put that out there before I mention her book in this list. But especially American Fairytale really stole the show for me in this series. They are NAMM romances, and in American Fairytale it talks about class and class differences and money. And it's about these two men who fall in love, and they've got a lot to navigate personality-wise. But one of the big things that they have is a huge class gap. So Tom, who is one of the love interests, has made quite a lot of money from his business, and then you've got the other guy who's just like living normal life and working on things that he's passionate on. And this romance was so cute, but I really appreciated seeing that discussion. Also, all of these are like Latinx Caribbean couples, so it's really good. It's really cute, but also it tackles those harsh themes and it tackles them well. Guys, there you have it. Those are 20 books with Black characters by Black authors tackling Black themes. I love each and every one for different reasons, and I hope you pick up one of these. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've read any of them, if you're planning to, or what is a book by a Black author that you really enjoy. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.